Good morning, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining us today. I'm just going to give it one more minute and then we will get started, just in case we've got some stragglers to join. Okay, good morning everyone and welcome to our webinar. Today we are going to be talking about single sign-on and automated user provisioning. To do that, I have the wonderful pleasure of welcoming Damien Turnbull, our Chief Technology Officer, back to join me today. Hi Damien.
Hi Elizabeth, and welcome everyone.
Okay, before we get started, I would just like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which we meet today and pay our respect to elders past and present. For those of you who haven't been on a webinar with Damien before, just a little bit of a highlight about Damien. He's worked in software companies both in Australia and abroad. He's very well versed in building the best solutions for SaaS companies. So I'm really grateful that he's here with us today to help us all get our heads around this crucial safety feature. Just again, please note that we will record this, so please share this. If your IT guys couldn't make it today, please share this around. We want to respond to all of your questions, so pop things into the Q&A panel for us if you want to. And if we don't get to them during the session, because there's going to be a lot of conversation today, we will respond to them and we'll email them out and pop them into the Logic Academy as well. And again, just a reminder, this series is all about our new features. So we really do want you to have the most, get the most value out of the platform, make it as easy as possible to use. So that's why we have these. And as you would be made aware, there's some other clinics and masterclasses coming out now as well. So please feel free to jump in at any time and join us for any of these webinars. So I'm going to get started and I will pop in and start my questions for Damien. Okay, so I think let's start with a scene where that's probably familiar to many of us, where a new employee, say, starts on the Monday, Damien, and HR is chasing their IT logins. The new staff member can't access all of their tools and help desk is fielding password reset tickets already. From your perspective, why is managing who has access to what applications still such a common and chaotic process for organisations?
Yeah, really good question, Liz. And just before we move forwards, I think you might be sharing your Outlook instead of your PowerPoint. Just I thought I'd pick that up. As interesting as reading your emails might be for everyone, I'll talk a little bit more about the question. So what you've described is something that I see a lot of. And at the heart of it, access management is still a real pain point because many organisations are relying on manual processes and siloed systems. So HR might have their own onboarding checklist, IT has to then create those accounts across dozens of different applications. And often there's no single source of truth for who should have access to what. So that results in delays. New starters have to wait often before they get the right access, and a lot of wasted time for IT and the help desk dealing with password resets or chasing down approvals. So on the flip side, when people leave the organisation, the same fragmented process means accounts are sometimes left open longer than they should be, and that creates a real security risk for the organisation. So it's both a productivity problem and a security problem, and the root cause is that too many organisations haven't yet automated and centralised how identity is managed. So that's why single sign-on and user provision are really powerful, because they replace that manual chaos and consistent automated way to control access for staff and also external contractors and all the rest.
Right. This sounds like a problem that touches everyone, from the HR that's making or adding this new person essentially to the organisation right down to IT. So can we break it down? You said the first part is single sign-on or SSO. For those new to the concept, can you explain what it is and how it tackles that problem of password fatigue for our staff?
Yeah, for sure. So single sign-on, or SSO as it is commonly referred to as, it's essentially one secure login that gives a user access to all the systems and applications that they need throughout your organisation. So instead of remembering a dozen different username and passwords, staff log in once and that identity is trusted everywhere. It's like a digital passport. This really tackles what's often called password fatigue. So staff aren't writing passwords on sticky notes. They're not reusing the same weak passwords across multiple apps, and they're not forgetting them as often. So for IT, that means fewer password reset tickets. For the organization, it means stronger security because the authentication process is centralized and can be backed up with things like multi-factor authentication. So staff have a smoother experience and IT has more control and visibility.
Right. Damien, these are all new terms that you're talking about. So can you just give us a little bit more, explain what multi-factor authentication is before we move on?
Yeah, that's a big long-winded term, isn't it? So multi-factor authentication, or you'll often hear it as 2FA, which is two-factor authentication. These days that can be multi-factor authentication. That's basically saying, hey, you need to authenticate more than once. And so just typing in your username and password, that's one authentication, but we also need a second level. Now, you'll see multi-factor authentication in a lot of different systems these days. Logic actually leverages off the single sign-on experience for multi-factor authentication. And what that really means is if you ever have your username and password compromised and someone actually gets a hold of it, to log in to the likes of Logic, they could do that with their username and password, but they also need another form of authentication. A lot of you might already be familiar with that, using things like an authenticator app, either from Microsoft or Google or whatever it happens to be. And there's lots of other different authentication methods too, text messaging and email and all sorts of things. But it prevents that attacker who might have your username and password to get into whatever system they're trying to do without going through that extra layer of security.
Right. Thank you, Damien. So that definitely makes it easier for you as a user that have all of these things that you have to log into on a daily basis. But what happens in the back end, especially when staff join or leave? Can you explain that other pillar, what is known as user provisioning, and how that automates the process of creating and then probably just as crucially deactivating user accounts?
Yeah, sure. So user provisioning, if you think about it with all these different systems, including Logic, we still need user accounts established in these systems. Now, provisioning allows us to automatically create or update those users and deactivate those users, I should say as well, based on a single source of truth. So usually it's either your HR system or in the Microsoft world, it's Active Directory or Entra, as it's now known as. So when a new hire starts or a new staff member or whoever, they instantly get the right access to the tools they need. So without IT manually setting them up in those individual systems. And also when someone leaves the organization, those accounts are automatically shut down. So if you can imagine these user accounts being automatically dispersed to the multiple business systems that you may be running, that's really what provisioning comes down to. So the two work together from a single sign-on and a provisioning perspective.
Great. Thanks, Damien. If we have SSO for seamless access and user provisioning for automated management, how do these two technologies work together to create a truly secure user lifecycle from day one to the employee's last day?
Yeah, so that's really important to understand. So single sign-on and provisioning are really two halves of the same coin. Provisioning makes sure that on day one, the right accounts are created automatically, and on the last day, they're securely disabled everywhere. Then single sign-on ensures that while someone is employed, they only need one secure login to access those accounts. So together, that creates a full life cycle. The right people get access to the right tools at the right time, and only for as long as they should. It's not just about convenience, it's about reducing risk. With provisioning, you don't end up with like ghost accounts left open, and with SSO, you can enforce strong authentication across your organization. So the results both are smooth onboarding and offboarding and a much stronger security posture throughout your organization as well.
Right. So let's dig a little bit deeper into the security aspect. As I know, that's a top concern for everyone here, and it's just the world that we live in today. How does having a centralized provisioning system directly address the major security risks of onboarding and help an IT manager pass their next security audit with confidence?
Yeah, great question. I think offboarding in particular is one of the biggest security gaps in most organizations. So if accounts aren't shut down quickly and consistently, then ex-employees can retain access to those sensitive systems, and sometimes that can be available for weeks or months. A centralized provisioning system eliminates that risk, and because it automates deactivation across all the connected applications. So the moment HR marks someone as having left, then those user accounts in those systems will be deactivated. From an audit perspective, that's huge. So instead of producing spreadsheets or manually proving that accounts were removed, IT managers can show auditors a centralized system of record. So it provides an auditable trail and when accounts were created and when they were disabled. So that traceability combined with the assurance that nothing slips through the cracks makes passing a security audit a lot more straightforward. So in short, fewer lingering accounts, less human error, and then you've got a clear compliance story.
Right. That must be a huge relief for IT, especially for organisations that have external providers. That would be a really good thing to have. Now, I want to talk to system administrators, the people who are deep in the trenches of this manual work. What does a day in their life look like after automating user provisioning? What are the biggest efficiencies and gains that they can expect?
Yeah, this is a good one. So for system administrators, if you haven't got SSO and provisioning in place, then really they're spending hours, every week just doing repetitive tasks like creating accounts in multiple systems, resetting passwords, chasing managers for access approvals, manually disabling accounts when people leave. So it's not particularly enjoyable work, and it pulls them away from working on strategic projects. So once provisioning's automated, that picture changes completely. Instead of living in tickets and spreadsheets, system administrators set the rules once, who gets access to what based on a role, and then they let the system take care of the rest. So the gains are significant in terms of faster onboarding, near zero offboarding errors, fewer password resets, and a lot less firefighting. So that frees them up to focus on more high value work, whether it's improving systems or strengthening security or whatever happens to be. So it just allows the IT team to be freed up to work on more exciting things.
Right. Sounds like a game changer for those guys. Let's look at it from HR and people leaders' perspective. We know first impressions matter. How does getting this right on day one transform the onboarding experience and set a new hire up for success with a company?
Yeah, well, I guess that it fundamentally changes the first impression, an organisation can make to a new hire. The old manual way sends a message of, I guess, disorganisation, where it sort of makes the new hire feel a bit more unproductive and a little bit of an afterthought, if I can use that word. With automation, a new employee can log in on the first morning and have immediate access to everything they need. So that sends a really powerful message, I feel, to new starters. And, it sort of says, we're organised, we value your time, and we're ready for you. It sets a positive, productive tone for the entire, I guess, tenure for the company.
Right. It really does sound like a win for everyone involved. For an organisation listening today that wants to move away from manual chaos and towards this streamlined model, what's the first practical step they should take in starting to plan for SSO and provisioning?
Yeah, look, I think the first step is really to identify your source of truth for your user identities. And that usually starts with, either the HR system or, in our case, we're really integrating to Microsoft Entra or Active Directory. So that's where the life cycle of an employee starts and ends. It's that anchor point for both SSO and provisioning. So imagine, most organizations have an IT partner who are managing this Active Directory already for things like Microsoft Office access and the likes. So there, once you've got that sort of single source of truth established, you can then take stock of the applications people use on a day-to-day and prioritize the ones that cause the most friction. So either because staff log into them constantly or because they're critical to security, and then start rolling out SSO to those individual applications. So that gives you a quick win, with staff while you're building towards a full provisioning solution. So the first step is really about mapping people, roles, and apps, and making sure that you know which system drives, the employee lifecycle. And then once you get that foundation right, you'll find that the project should then flow quite smoothly from there.
That's great practical advice. Thanks, Damien. Finally, looking ahead, what gets you excited about the future of identity and access management? What Where is this technology heading?
Yeah, I think what excites me most, Elizabeth, is really the fact that identity and access management, it's moving more from being a purely technical function to being a real enabler for a business. So it's about efficiency. So we'll see more use of sort of context-aware security, though, in the technical space, where access isn't just about who you are, but also where you are, what device you're on, what you're trying to do. So that should provide us with tighter security without adding friction to the user, which is really important. So we're also seeing AI and automation play a bigger role, spotting unusual patterns in access, predicting risks before they happen. And of course, the ongoing shift to password-less authentication, such as Face ID. I think that will probably put a bit of an end to the headache of managing passwords altogether. So that's really exciting. So for me, the direction is clear. Less friction for users, stronger security for organisations, and more intelligence in how access decisions are made. And I think that's a win for everyone.
Sure is. Damien, thank you for breaking that down for us. It's clear this is less about technology for the sake of technology and more about creating a more secure, efficient and user-friendly environment for everyone. I'll ask if anyone has any questions. Please feel free to pop them in the Q&A. Give it a minute or so. If no one has any questions, then I'd just like to say thank you for joining us today. If your IT team wasn't able to join, please remind them that this session will be on the Logic Academy and it'll also be in your mail out. If anyone thinks of anything after, please shoot us an email to support@logic.com.au, or if you're more interested in this feature at all or anything else, please you can also email us at customersuccess@logic.com.au. Damien, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate that. Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.